There we go, Brad. There we go. We're smiling. We're smiling. Oh, hello, Brad Jaehn. How are you?
Hello, Jeremy Blue.
It's been a bit. I really appreciate you moving so fast. We were messaging for the first time in 15 years, probably.
It's been a few moons.
Yeah, a few moons. We had kept up through LinkedIn on where each person has been ascending and pivoting in our mutual careers. And I wanted to move fast on this one because I saw something that you posted that was A, so vulnerable, B, something so near and dear to my heart on something I'm passionate about, and then C, the business model of what we do for OhHello. Like every component of what you posted about encompasses our OhHello.ai. So without further ado, why don't you just introduce yourself, Brad? Tell our audience who I have the pleasure of speaking with right now.
So, name's Brad Jaehn. I'm I guess at this point, a 30-year veteran of the digital space. A long tenured person in the annals of Chicago technology history at this point, having been part of some amazing companies like Orbitz, GoGo, McDonald's. Spent a number of years in the consulting space and have had tremendous career highs. And I've had some, boy, that bus ran over me kind of days in my professional career. It's been a ride, and the ride continues.
The ride continues. The bus always stops. At times, the bus might go through a pothole. It might have a flat tire. There might be some crazy dude harassing others. But you go along for the ride. Life is short, but there are going to be some bumps. Can you set the moment and help us understand, without sharing specifics, but what happened over this past few days?
Yeah. So still really processing it. So about 48 hours ago, I was terminated from a job that I absolutely loved. And having spent the better part of the last 4 years in a really just amazing role, helping facilitate the transformation of a company, I was terminated because I was accused of having a second job. And the second job was 2 hours a month that I spent mentoring people on the side outside of work. And it was found, it was determined, I never hid anything by doing this. I just literally forgot to send an email. And so I was immediately terminated for having a second job. And it's really unfortunate. I'm still pretty filled with emotion about it.
Yeah, I can see and appreciate the level of vulnerability, and I mean this as with all sincere respect. I have so much empathy for what you're going through, and I'm sure so many people that are watching, that are listening to this, do too. What was your first thought, and as when you got hit with the news of, hey, you're no longer going to be working at said company because you were mentoring someone who wanted help?
Yeah, I think it took me a little bit to just process through that. And it was positioned as, you have a second job. And I know the organization has struggled with software developers having second jobs that take 8 or 10 hours out of their day, or graphic designers who aren't just freelancing, they're doing duplicate second jobs. And as I was discussing this and told, well, you have a second job, and I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, all those mornings I got up at 7 a.m. or took a red-eye flight home, and I sat in an airport lounge talking to someone who's in their 30s, who's early in their career, helping them. Like, yeah, okay, technically a violation, but punishment and crime here feel a little misaligned. And this was never intended as a means or mechanism to make money. The money was all donated, and the intent was that I got lucky early in my career that people helped me. I'm just trying to get back.
Totally. And you and I first met when you were building a startup a long time ago with a mutual friend. And you've had, as you mentioned, by riding the bus, you've made some great turns, some harder turns. Did you ever think that by mentoring someone, by mentoring people, by helping them with whether it's mental health, career ascension, helping them figure out how to communicate directly with their bosses, and they're working externally you don't work at the same company. Did you ever think that this would be frowned upon and that you'd be penalized in a world where most companies are becoming more and more distributed? Most companies, as you know, from having a very high-end tech executive experience, being forward-thinking in AI, like some people are afraid that AI is going to take their jobs. Other people are afraid of like, oh my God, I have to go back to the office and play the commuting game and play my long-winded way to say, give us a little bit more insight.
Well, I think that, I've had the luxury of working with and across many organizations and in for many years. And what I've observed is development of people looks great on a PowerPoint slide, but in terms of making it real, not really something that I see a ton of investment in the majority of organizations. And having studied a lot of organizations, in addition to having worked at them, I think what really sets aside great companies is the investment it makes in the people, the investment it makes in its leaders to lead those people. And this isn't a mandatory training class because there's a compliance thing due next month. That's not development. That's compliance. And if it's a self-directed program like go back to school, I think that's a rarity these days. So I think that organizations do not invest in their people in ways that truly create, number one, learning organizations, and number two, healthy organizations.
So let's hit on both of those. So companies say they want growth, they want curiosity, they want leadership, they want collaboration. But there's certainly a gap. There's this level of mistrust that's taking place. Do you think it's about control? Do you think where do you think things go awry? Is it about IP?
I think the IP one is probably very low on the list. I mean, we could probably come back to that. But I think in terms of, I'm a CFO. I look at my balance sheet. If I have a unit of available labor and they're spending one of those 40 hours of labor every week developing someone else, what's the output that's being created? How many units are being shipped? How many widgets are being made? It's the direct ROI is intangible. However, the intrinsic ROI, I would argue, is immeasurable in so much that you look at things like employee turnover. That's an easy metric to measure. How about employee happiness? And when you look at employee surveys,
yep,
they're questionable at best in a lot of organizations. The utilization of the results of said employee surveys, even less utilized. And so I think that is it difficult to discern the ROI? Therefore, it makes it a valueless activity. There's an economic argument to that. I think there's also leaders also need to be mentored. And who does that? Because you look in many organizations, promotion is a function of being the best at a task. I'm the best task doer. Therefore, I now take on the management, not the leadership, but the management of the task doers underneath me. At that point, who teaches me? Who tells me, well, you are no longer a task doer. You are a people leader. What does that look like? And I think mentoring and going back to an organization called The Creative Good that I was so blessed with becoming part of 20 plus years ago. The underlying thesis is the higher you go in an organization, the lower and lower it becomes. The more you need the ability to ask for help. And I think that often comes from having to look outside. Many organizations, it doesn't facilitate it inward.
Looking back at your career, who are some mentors that have played a big impact on you that you want to give a shout to that have?
Sure. I mean, I think I can really call out my boss at GoGo, Ash Eldefrawi. I will thank Ash until the day that neither of us probably are logging on to a Zoom call. That he had a transformative impact on my career where Ash said, I'm going to bring in external people to help develop my leadership team. I'm going to present them with the harsh facts. I'm going to present them with the ugly truths. I'm going to create an environment of accountability and development. And I think Ash was somebody who really just reinforced that to me. I think that's one. And I think the second one was a guy named Bob Armour. Bob was a direct boss many, many moons ago. He's a very successful Chicago CMO. He was one that first introduced me to The Creative Good. And I think that introduction to Phil Terry and his organization where it said, leadership's lonely. It's okay to ask for help. I think those two folks had just such an unbelievably strong impact on my career.
Awesome for you to give them both shouts. I loved hearing about that specifically. When you think about AI and information continuing to scale and the communal components of the aggregation of all of these insights and data that comes from humanity, from the inputs, the outputs, and eventually AI becomes infinite, does human guidance become more or less important to you?
I think it is becoming more and more fundamentally critical every day. And I look at this where, I think you describe AI as the body of collective knowledge. It's kind of like walking into a library and randomly picking a book. And then you pick another book and you put those two together and you say, now I understand a concept. And, I'm going to very personally say, being the dad of a couple of great young men, 18 and 21-year-olds, what I see with them is critical thinking. It's not as strong as I think it needs to be at times. There's a level of the machine told me, the screen said it, therefore it's real. And I think especially now as we're all faced with an onslaught of AI, critical thinking, questioning are unbelievably more impactful than ever. And how often does Claude get the days of the week wrong? It still gets the days of the week wrong. And if I can't get the days of the week, and the models will improve, the technology, we absolutely acknowledge that. But I think so much about organizations is about interpersonal connection. It's about the people element. And AI, maybe in some form or fashion someday, we'll be able to understand the humanity and the necessity of human connection and the intricacies and complexities of human connection. It can't today.
I completely agree with you. And when I think about AI and I think about distributed teams, you and I talked before we hit record, the impact and the increase of distributed teams. And when you, in your most former role, you would talking at 6 or 7 in the morning with a team on one part of the world, then at 7 or 8 p.m. on the other side of the world, and giving it your all. But with the continued availability to be able to pop into Zoom or a Google Meet anywhere in the world, do you think that with distributed teams, it's becoming external perspective is becoming a necessity, a threat, a luxury? Give us your 2 cents.
Yeah, having done a lot of research in grad school on distributed and remote organizations, they're a very unique paradigm. And I think that there's a couple of factors that leaders really need to take into account. One is some of these people may not even know what each other look like. And the relationships, the signals between those individuals, the empathy amongst those people is often diminished. And external signals, I think there's a huge value in understanding that these teams may not even work synchronously. And so it is a completely different model of human interaction that we have never seen before. And I think that introduces new leadership complexities in many ways. It introduces communication complexities, the ability for misunderstandings, myths, and stereotypes to explode happens almost instantly. And I think that most distributed teams are challenged because the leaders of those those distributed teams don't know how to lead a distributed group of individuals.
What about those leaders that are forward thinking, that are innovative, that realize, that have that level of empathy, that realize that their teams are craving and thriving for that kind of environment of getting help by external experts?
I think those rare leaders are the ones that will find tremendous success. It may not be in their current organization, but as we continue to grow and evolve, technology continues to grow and evolve, that type of leadership will be absolutely critical. And I think that asking for help externally is fundamental.
I agree. 100% agree. Any other words of wisdom, parting advice for budding leaders, for those that are watching and listening?
Yeah, I think number one, it's okay to ask for help, and the ability to find somebody. And I think, even the ability to say, hey, will you be my mentor? That's an uncomfortable conversation to have. The worst somebody can do is say no. So, and I am of a firm believer that we're all good humans at the end of the day. We're all here to try to help each other, kind of get through the days. And 99% of the time, if you ask somebody, hey, can you share a piece of advice about the mistakes you made or the success you have, and what can I do differently? What can I learn from you? Probably going to share it. So ask for help.
Love that. Brad, this has been great. Thank you for putting yourself out there. I am absolutely confident that amongst our collective networks and so many of those that are now coming across your post, that you will land somewhere amazing where the leaders and the execs will appreciate your level of empathy, appreciate that you are pushing and helping the next generation, and those that are at the same level as you as well, that are able to just learn how to just embracing help and asking for help. So thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Jeremy, thank you. This has been great. I really appreciate the time today.
Yeah, you bet, Brett. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Until the next one.